What's up, No Nation? It's the guys from Plant the Spear back with you for another episode. And Michael, just when we said we didn't know if we were going to have much to talk about, we got a fully loaded show for you guys today. We've got national championships to talk about for the Seminoles for a different football team. We've got coaching changes, we've got early signing day, and we've got the college football playoffs to talk about. Now, obviously, Florida State is not in the college football playoffs, but we still want to share some thoughts on that whole process and everything there as well. So, man, we got a lot to cover today. It's going to be a fun show, a lot of news, a lot of just kind of sitting back and just kind of talking, shooting a breeze with all the news that we got at our feet here to talk about. So, man, excited for this one. Appreciate y'all rocking with us. I know during the off season, it's playoff time, and everyone's probably still a little bit mad at Florida State throughout the season. But guys, we're not going anywhere. We're going to still be here talking about this team. So, man, we appreciate y'all rocking with us. And Michael, man, we got a lot to cover today. So I'm excited for this show.
Yeah, man, for sure. I love. The off season isn't always the most fun, especially when you're a Florida State football fan. And by
Yeah.
football, I mean the pigskin football, not the
Yeah.
soccer football, because at least that football is actually doing something and
Yeah.
making a difference. Those women, I know we're going to talk about it. They're awesome, and congratulations to them. But I know the offseason is always fun, but just hang with us at PTS. We promise to try to bring you as much content as we possibly can to get you through another miserable offseason.
I know, man. And you hate to be like that, right? But it was kind of where I think we were talked about it on Sunday. We were going to jump on, and I was like, man, I just didn't feel like it because
Yeah.
there just wasn't a whole lot of positive stuff to talk about. But, again, we got a lot to talk about today. And so we're going to share our opinion on all this stuff, man. So really excited to jump into it. And the first place we're going to start is the positive news, because why not, right? The football, right?
The
Not football, the
football.
football. The women's soccer team went on to win their fifth national championship last night, depending on when you're watching this. It was on Monday night. And man, it was awesome to watch. Like, I watched the whole thing from start to finish and just so proud of the fight that they had in that game. They won 1-0 versus Stanford. And really, it came off the back of an incredible defensive performance. I mean,
Yeah.
I watched, watching most of this game, man. Stanford was really kind of owning the game, controlling the game early on. I mean, they had so many more shots on goal than we did. And it was like, man, if they don't figure something out, eventually they're going to kind of break that dam and they're going to score, and you might be in trouble. Like, we're going to talk about the goalie in a second, but she saved the game for you. Like, it very easily could have been over in the first half with how aggressive Stanford was playing. And that's a really good program. They have 3 national championships themselves.
Right.
But Florida State finds a way and breaks through late in the game. I think around 3 minutes left or so, 3.5 minutes left. They get on the board, they get a goal in there, and it's enough to hang on and win. So, man, what an absolute dynasty that this program is creating. I mean, not only have you won 5 national titles, it's been with 2 different coaches. Penske, he's got 2 now since he's arrived at Florida State. Kokorian obviously had the others there. So, man, just absolute big shout out to the women's soccer program going out and winning their 5th national title. Man, watching that game, Jordan Dudley, number 11, was a player that I wanted to shout out. She is an absolute
Mm-hmm.
warrior, man. I mean, she was all over that field. And I tell you what, man, they're pretty aggressive, right? They're pretty
Yep.
tough. They get into it. It was kind of fun to watch. But, man, for me, the one that has to get a shout out is the goalkeeper, Kate. Man,
Yeah.
she was unbelievable
Yep.
in that game last night. And, Michael, I don't know if you knew this, but I played soccer in high school, and I was a
Look at
goalie
you.
myself. I was mostly a goalie because I didn't want to run. That was most of it. I wanted to hit people and not run. And so that's what the goalkeeper did. But, man, she had 9 saves in that game last night. And some of them were flat out incredible saves. So, man,
Yeah.
huge performance by her to be able to keep Florida State in that game. And so we just wanted to start the show by giving a shout out to a team that just went out and won a national championship. So, again, this show is dominated by football news, but we are all things Florida State. And so we had to start with a team that deserves to be talked about more, man. They've turned this thing into a dynasty and can't be more proud of them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is the second time in their national championship run. The last 2 national championships, guess who they beat? Both times, Stanford, right?
Yeah.
Last year they had the disappointing loss in the PKs to Vanderbilt, I believe it was. But this year they came back, and oftentimes when they look back to those games, last year, Vanderbilt had so many PKs against them, or shot on goals against them, that they were the better team, and yet they just could not overcome that. Then you reverse it again this year. And Stanford is just getting shot on goal, on goal, on goal, on goal. And Kate, man, as the goalie, she was having a phenomenal game. There was one where I think it was a penalty kick where she blocked it, and it was like clearly if she makes the wrong move, that's a goal
Mhm.
for Stanford.
Yeah.
And Hudson, who made the goal, the game-winning goal. Man, what a kick. It was just incredible. The intensity of the night, just like over and over again. With 3 minutes to go, you had
I
3
know.
minutes
I
in the
know.
game for them to score at that point in time, because you might have to go to penalty kicks. And gosh, anything can happen during penalty kicks. And it was just absolutely incredible. Kudos to those women. Kudos to the coach. He's won 2 national titles since he's been here. They have 5 national titles in the last 18 years, man. 5 national. They are a true dynasty. And it looks like, just from what I read, that next year's team might even be better than
Yeah.
this year's team.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the star goalie that you have, she's only a freshman, which
Yeah.
is insane. And so again, huge shout out to them. I don't know, man, maybe they can go over and teach the other football team how to do a few things,
That'd be
because that would be
nice.
not that would be really nice. So man, again, we just wanted to start the show giving them a big shout out. It was really fun to watch them clinch that last night. And again, man, like I told you before the show, I was standing up in front of the TV, and like I don't watch a ton of the soccer, but like I do appreciate the sport. Like I said, I
Yeah.
played in high school, almost went to college for soccer. And then, so yeah, I was there in front of the team. I was screaming and
Yes.
yelling and like, come on. And I was like, knock her ass out or whatever. Like, come on. So like you get into it, man. And I'll tell you what, last thing on this, but like the women's soccer and you watch softball and all that, they trash talk as bad as
Oh, they
anybody. So
do.
like,
Oh gosh.
yeah, man. So they make it fun. It's like, you think men's sports are bad, women's sports are twice as bad with the
Woo.
trash talk. So it was really, they were getting in. There was a very physical soccer game.
Mhm.
So it was really fun to watch, man. Excited about the future of that program as well. So kudos to you guys. Wanted to start out with that. Michael, now, if you want to celebrate that national championship, the best place to do it is by getting you a shirt from Alumni Hall FSU, today's sponsor. They put up last night that you can pre-order some shirts. I think they're selling out pretty quick. So if you want one, you better go grab one. And they have gear from all the other sports too, right? So if you're down in the dumps about football, you can get baseball shirts, basketball, soccer, all that stuff from there. So make sure you check those guys out. 1415 Timber Lane Road in Tallahassee is the location, or you can shop online at alumnihall.com. Navigate over to the FSU page and save 10% with code SPEAR. If you're going to be in there buying the gear, you might as well save yourself some money anyway. So that's alumnihall.com. 10% off with code SPEAR. That's online or in store. So we really appreciate you guys for supporting them and for them supporting us. Michael, let's transition to the other football team that we have here that maybe isn't as fun to talk about right now, but that's still the task at hand. And so we're going to start with the changes in the coaching ranks that have happened so far this season. And we've got a couple moves that have been made, more so some news on some moves that haven't been made. So that's where we're starting at. And I think the first thing to talk about is, let's start from the top of the coaching ranks. But besides Mike Norvell, because we already know he's going to be retained. Right now, it does seem like Gus and Tony will be back for 2026, right? When Mike Norvell talked about the Patrick Surtain change, which we're going to talk about next, he said there had been no conversations about replacing the coordinators. And so we had thought maybe Gus would retire. We had thought maybe he would take another job, because he did interview for other jobs, even though he said he wasn't open to, he didn't want to be a head coach anymore. I think unless it's a retirement situation, man, I think he's going to be back. And I think Tony's going to be back too. And so I don't want to spend the whole show talking about that, because we'll have plenty of time for that during the offseason. But the little bit that I will say here is, from Gus Malzahn's perspective, I don't love him coming back, because, we felt great about the offense in the first 3 to 4 games. And then really you just could never score on the road. It became a gimmicky offense. We're not going to go through all of that. But at least I will say, think of all the opportunities you missed because you didn't have good quarterback play, right? So if you can continue to elevate that position, maybe possibly get Deuce back, which I've heard there is a lean that he might possibly be coming back. If you get him a quality quarterback, I think the offense can see a little bit more improvement next year, like they saw this year over 24. But is that going to be good enough? I don't think it's going to be long term, but I do at least think it can get better. As I've said before, the biggest fear for me is now you have to go out and do it with an entirely new offensive line. And I don't know how much you trust the guys that you have brought in. You're going to have to go get some guys out of the portal. So that's kind of where I stand with that. From the Tony White side of things, honestly, man, at the beginning of the season, after the Alabama and the cupcake games, and we were talking about Virginia,
Mhm.
and when we were talking about the Pitt game and all that, man, I was ready to pack up Tony White and send him to UCLA. Right? You want that job, or you don't want that job? We're going to give you that job, and send him on his way. But then the defense really did start to change throughout the rest of the season. Right? They got better. They held Wake down. They held Virginia Tech down. Granted, a lot of that was you were playing worse offenses than you did in the beginning of the season. But we have seen Tony White's defenses in the past get better in like the first or second year after he arrives. And I really do think there are a lot of personnel problems on that defense. And so, like I said, we'll have all off season to talk about this. They've made another hire on the defensive line that hopefully will help this, that we'll talk about here in a minute. But I do think with Tony White, I think if you give him another year, you get him some better personnel. Keyword, you have to go get that. That's been the
Mhm.
challenge. But
Mhm.
if you can do that and it can build on the end of the season here, I think the defense can be okay in 2026. So it does seem like both of them are going to be back. Maybe not things that we love, but if you think the team did somewhat get better and maybe their numbers don't match the record they should have produced,
Yeah.
then you could see where let's give that another year and let's see how it fleshes out. But again, I think we all want to change in the top 3 positions, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. So now we just got to roll with what we got. Now that doesn't mean it's for sure. I want to say that, but I'll kick it back to you. But it does seem like they're going to both be back.
Yeah, yeah. With Tony White, I always had the assumption that he was going to be back. There was nothing out there that was indicating that
Yeah,
he
I don't
was
think he was
leaving.
ever going to take UCLA. I don't.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think he was ever going to take UCLA. I always assumed he would be back. I thought they might make some couple of changes along the staff of the defensive side, and I know we'll get to that in a second. But I always assumed he was going to be back. I do think you give him a second year. Obviously, he's got a 3 year contract, so he is going to get a second year. But yeah, you give him a second year. You have to, like you said, you have to go get the players that he needs to run that. He had a lot of my gripe was really with the secondary and then playing 10 yards off and then, giving up, 8-yard completions every time. Some of that is because what I realized later on with watching the film and hearing different perspectives is that you have a lot of man specialist corners playing
Yeah.
your corners. You don't have a lot of zone confident corners. Therefore, you have to pull them back further to make them more comfortable playing in a zone like scheme. But if you're able to go get more corners that have zone eyes, and some of these, especially the highest rated recruit that Florida State has, and Chuck Keenan, I know we'll talk about it later. He's more of a zone type of
Mm-hmm.
cornerback, which is going to help you, better scheme. So from that sense, I totally understand Tony White coming back. I've always kind of assumed he would come back. From the Gus Malzahn perspective, yes, right now it looks like he's going to be returning. There is belief around the program from a lot of the beat writers out there, a lot of the other people who are in the know, that they keep saying that they don't think it's going to happen. But the longer this goes without any word, the longer it's easier for us to believe, Jesse, that he's going to be back. And again,
Mm-hmm.
Gus Malzahn's offense wasn't terrible. It wasn't bad. It just went missing on the road. And I think a
Right.
lot of that had to do, I really do now, think a lot of that had to do with the quarterback that you had running the
Mm-hmm.
ship, right? Who couldn't throw, he couldn't throw a receiver open. He had to see the receiver be open in order to make the throw. And then it was always too late. He was often injured. You were changing out the running backs way too much. And I know we'll talk about the coaching change there. And so I think a lot of that. So if he does come back a second year, the hope is that he has a better quarterback that can actually throw a receiver open, that can, and that they'll focus in on 1 to 2 running backs instead of the whole stable of running backs.
Yeah, and I do think you bring up some good points, right? First, I would say to the offense, like if you had Jordan Travis back there at quarterback,
Mm,
it's probably a 9-win team easily,
exactly.
right? Because you're going to make those throws that are going to put you over the edge. And then on the defense, you're right. When you think back to Adam Fuller and his time here, he was basically a man leave
Man.
you on an island,
Yep.
right? And that's kind of the personnel that you have. So I think it's one of those, you give these changes more time to flesh out to see if they're actually going to work. It's just hard because and it may be a situation where you just, hey, look, man, we don't want to be stuck with Mike either way. So we're going to let you keep the coordinators that you
Right.
hired. And then when we have to kind of flush all of you, if this doesn't work out, then it's cheaper to get rid of all of you. We're not
At the
having to,
same time.
because
Yeah.
we had said the other day, if you fire Gus Malzahn right now, it's about $4.75 million.
Right.
Well, if you let him go another year and things still didn't work out, it's cheaper to fire Mike. It's cheaper to fire them. So all of that adds into the snowball of the buyouts that you would have to pay. But speaking of moves that have already actually happened, the first one, Michael, caught me out of nowhere. I
Oh,
will not lie from you. I was very surprised to see Patrick Surtain get fired or not retained from Florida State, however you want to look at it.
yeah.
His contract was expiring and they basically decided not to move on. He sent out a bit of a spicy tweet afterwards about getting fired. And so obviously this was not a mutual thing. This sounds like it was in all purposes a firing,
Mhm.
not a mutual parting of ways. And you know what, man? At first, I think you had the shock factor, right? Like, what in the heck are we doing? Who is making these decisions? You just fired your best recruiter on staff, the guy who
It's
had,
not even close.
right, probably the deepest connections to South Florida. Like,
The only connections.
why would you do this, man? You had been starting to pull some kids from that area, and so it was nice. But then you also look at the fact of once you let that settle in a little bit, I kind of talked to myself about it. I'm like, okay, well, in 23, when he was hired, he produced the number 11 passing defense. It was great. You had a couple NFL draft picks out of it. This is awesome, man. Things are going really good. You're stacking the roster with talent on the backside of that. 24, the secondary was not good. In the same system, 25, the secondary was not very good. I mean, if we're being honest, like there were times it was okay, but the Pitt game, they got carved up. They were
Mhm,
terrible.
mhm.
Now, granted, that's not all on Patrick Surtain because you brought in, the safeties coach, Evan Cooper, to run half the secondary. But at the end of the day, man, I don't love that you fired your best recruiter. As long as you can replace him with a guy that can recruit, I think that part could be okay. But I also understand that if you're not getting the most out of that talent, and I mean, you look at the Florida game, you put in Charles Lester, he goes in, he gets burnt,
Yeah,
and it's just like, man, what?
cook burnt.
Like that's one of your 5 stars, right? And you're
Yeah.
out here getting roasted by a 3-win team. And so I think it kind of comes back to me to some this hiring up or this firing up. It's kind of like Alex Atkins, right? He was great on the recruiting trail, but then you look at the on-field product and it just didn't match the results. The results didn't match. And so I don't love that you got rid of him, but I'm okay with not keeping him either because the secondary certainly could get better. But I'll kick it back to you for some thoughts, man. The only thing I will say about this that I thought was kind of funny is I guess we finally found out who gave Mike Norvell the black eye. I think
Mm.
that I think that might have been Sertan. So, but no, yeah, I have heard there were possibly some not on the field issues that led to this, maybe some disagreements and
Rumblings.
off the field and stuff,
Yeah.
rumblings and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a shock to see this one be the first one.
Yeah. Here's my thing. Like, and I think you'll agree with me on this, Jesse. Fire them all, everybody, including Mike.
You
They
daggone
all
right.
need to go. Okay.
I've told
So
you before, no offense to the guy, but whoever empties trash cans at the athletic
he
office,
needs to
you
go.
you don't have to get fired. You just got to get reassigned to a new
You
department.
somewhere else, right? I'm just saying, like, they can all go. So to me,
Yeah.
whatever. But when you look at like the hierarchy of firings, you would have assumed, I would have assumed that he'd be way down the list.
Yep.
Like, yes, fire him, sure, whatever. They've all sucked, but he'd be like one of the last ones because he's been your best recruiter, and it's not even been close to your best recruiter. He was the best. He got you talent. He was your only true connection to South Florida, where the talent is the most richest in the state of Florida. So
Yeah.
to me, it just didn't make a lot of sense that he would be your first. And again, like you said, this wasn't like a mutual parting of ways. This was everything but mutual. This was a
Yeah.
firing. And there are other coaches on your defensive staff, JP, that deserve to be fired first. I mean,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. So that's my only problem is that why did you start there and not where every fan would have told you where you needed to start at first? But at
Right.
the end of the day, he wasn't working for Tony White's scheme. He's more of a man
Hmm.
type of corner. So I know that was probably some of the issues there as well too. Obviously, some of the rumblings that there was some stuff probably happening, off the field that we don't, know about, whatever. Sure that as well too, because that was like it was clicking, it was quick and easy.
Yeah. And that's the thing, man, is I'm not upset that like they fired Sertan because again, I mean, you weren't exactly recruiting the greatest, or I
Right.
mean, you recruiting, but you weren't producing the greatest secondary on the field, and that's what really matters. it was just more for me. It was like, how is this first? And there better be more. If we're
Yeah.
going to fire a guy
Right.
like Patrick Surtain, there are plenty of coaches on the staff that are doing much less,
Right.
not even mentioning the one at the top. And so that was the part that surprised me about that. And then you also lose David Johnson too, who's going to go to Arkansas for the same position. So, yeah, we'll see. I think you're going to look at probably bringing in a guy who's more suited for Tony White's defense there. And you may see a guy come in at the running back position that's more suited for like dealing with Gus Malzahn. Because again, these were two holdovers from the
Right.
old staff. These weren't Tony White and Gus Malzahn's guys. So you may see something there too. There's been some rumblings. Maybe you go after Coach Locke, who was here before. That's at Ohio State now. I don't know why I would make that move to leave. I know there's also some talk about maybe getting the DB coach from UCF to replace Patrick Surtain because he's like related to Tim Harris and all that. Who
Yeah.
at least Tim Harris does give you a South Florida connection. He does have that as well. But David Johnson moving on as well, man. And I liked Yak as a person, right? He was a nice guy. The problem that I had with Yak is like, man, I don't know if this was like he's leaving for a new staff somewhere better, because obviously he had a relationship with Ryan Silverfield from his time at Memphis, so they knew each other as well. So, and I also wondered if like maybe Mike Norvell wanted to make a little bit of a change, if maybe he was like, hey, he may have greased the wheels for that move, right? Because Mike Norvell knows the head coach too, and so I don't know, man. Again, anybody who had anything to do with this last little bit of stretch for us that's been bad, I don't hate to see them go, but he has produced some pretty decent running backs. He has recruited pretty well.
Yeah.
I just think, with the rotation of the running backs, I don't know if that's on David Johnson. I don't know if that's on Gus Malzahn. I don't know who that's on, but we were told in the beginning of the season it was going to be 2 to 3 guys that they were going to focus on, and it ended up being 200 to 300 guys. It felt like.
Right.
And so I don't hate the move, but I don't think David Johnson was as much as the problem as some of the other coaches again, but it sounds like he may have been leaving on his own accord. So, another one at the changing of the guard, man. And, again, when you're 7-17 in the past 2 years, I'm in favor of all change. I like David Johnson, but I'm in favor of all change when the results have been what they are.
Yeah, like listen, for David Johnson, he was the recruiting coordinator, and that title really has become more obsolete with the introduction of the GM. Now you have a dedicated person who's GM, and so he was always. I have a friend who's an Arkansas fan. I was telling him congratulations, and he's like, "What should we expect from him?" And I said, "Well, he's always good for at least one good recruit every year.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Cromer, you got Sam Singleton. I mean, he's good for. I mean, the running backs have never been a problem. Lawrence Toafili, Trey Benson. I know that
Cam Davis. I know he hasn't done a whole lot, but that was a 5-star.
That was a 5-star. So like, you're good. He's going to bring you really good running back talent. The problem has been, what is he going to produce? And this year, I don't. I would love to know. I'd love to have a fly on the wall. Who in the world was making the decision that we're going to just rotate backs every and we're going to play 5-6 backs of games? Like,
Yeah.
I'd love to know that, because that's just not been a typical Gus Malzahn operating Mirandus. And so, was that David Johnson? Was that Gus? Was that Mike? Was it a combination? And so I just told him, I was like, hey, you're going to get a good running backs recruiter. Outside of that, I don't really know what worth he brings to you.
Yeah, you just need to make sure you have a good offensive line, and his backs will produce. And so,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another move. But again, like I said, man, I mean, they were two of your better recruiters. Chris Thompson was one of your best recruiters, if we're being honest. He just kind of quietly just keeps bringing in blue chip tight ends. But yeah, I mean, when you produce the results that you have, I'm not mad at any bit of change. Now, one that's not really a headline, just worth mentioning, is Zach Arnett is heading back to Mississippi State to be a defensive coordinator for them. That's where he left. He was their head coach. He was their defensive coordinator before he was their head coach. He's headed back that way now. The only reason I mentioned that was, this was a guy who was a head coach that was an analyst on the staff, and we had talked about how they kind of are upping their staff a little bit. And this was also a guy that when we thought Tony White might have been leaving, who ran a similar defense, he could be a shoe-in for the DC candidate. So just keep in mind that he is no longer going to be there. He's going back to Mississippi State, which is weird, man. There's a lot of retreading going on. Like Zach Arnett's back at Mississippi State. Brent Pry just got fired as the head coach of Virginia Tech. Now he's back as the defensive coordinator. Like, well, that's a crazy world that you're living in. Now, let's talk about an addition to the staff. We've only added one, but let's talk about an addition to the staff. Florida State hires defensive ends or edges coach Nick Williams. He is coming from Syracuse, where he was at the past 2 seasons. And then he also started his on-field position coaching career at Colorado with Deion a couple years ago. He was a GA at Georgia. He was a support staff member at Texas A&M prior to being at Colorado, and he did play at Georgia. So the thing with this guy that I'm looking at, man, is he's rather inexperienced with only 3 years of on-field coaching experience at the position. But the good thing is he has a great pedigree coming from Georgia. He was on Kirby Smart's staff when they won, I think, 2 of the national titles that they did, the back-to-backs. He went out there and worked with Elko at Texas. He was part of that 2022 recruiting class. That was the best recruiting class in Texas or in college football history. So he does have a good pedigree, and he does have a track record of being a good recruiter. And so he's kind of a young and up-and-comer. I like this hire, at least from a recruiting perspective, right? We'll see what difference it makes on the field. I mean, Syracuse is not really ranking super high in like sacks and stuff like that from the defensive ends, but you also got to look at the talent factor there. He did help lure in a big transfer from Texas A&M to Syracuse, who ended up being an NFL draft pick. So he's got a very short history in the coaching perspective, but he's got a good history. And so I like it, man. I just will say this. It is kind of crazy that if in an ideal world, Tony White's defense is going to use one defensive tackle, a nose tackle. And I know he's multiple. Like, we're paying a guy probably $600,000-$700,000 to coach one position in a position group. That's just wild when you talk about Terrence Knighton, because Terrence Knighton will probably just focus more on the interior. Now, there's going to be a lot of cross-training and stuff like that, because we know these guys are very versatile, and some guys, will be moved inside and out. But overall, when we talk about this hire, man, again, it's a guy that doesn't have a ton of on-field experience, but I love the recruiting prowess that he brings to Florida State. So we'll see how it pays off. But the edge was a position that was severely lacking in this defense last year. So the fact that they are acknowledging that and they are bringing in a guy to specifically coach that position, because it's so different from nose tackle, what Pot Roast played and what he coaches, man. It's just so much different. So I'm okay with this hire. I like it. I think we'll see how it plays out on the field. But if he can land us some talent, maybe a Jared Verse or something like that, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, if you go back, I hate to bring up his name because I definitely would like him to be gone, but John Papuchis was the DN coach when he first got here. And we had DNs that we were producing. Now, granted, they were all transfer portal players, but still, they were producing when you had a coach specifically focused on them. With Pot Roast coming in, let me just tell you, the DNs were just not good. Not good at all.
Not there. They were non-existent. It felt like.
James William was basically a Twitter gym player,
Yeah, he was a human washing machine. He just goes out there and spins around a whole lot.
Spins around a whole lot and does nothing. I think it was the game before Florida. What was that game?
NC State.
NC State game was the first time you heard his name in like weeks.
Yeah, since he played at Nebraska.
So I like the addition of this. I like the fact that he was at Georgia. I like the fact that he was at Texas A&M with the greatest class or the greatest recruiting class in history of college football. So he knows what they look like. And so if he can actually go out and actually get some of these players to come in and be a part of that, and he have that focus on that, and let Pot Roast, who's slated to make $650,000 next year coaching one player, then it's just, man, gosh, we're in the wrong career, aren't we, man?
That's some expensive pot roast. I'm just saying,
boy. If I have some good carrots with that pot roast,
there's got to be some USDA prime beef in there.
Prime beef. But yeah, I think having a coach that can actually focus on the DNs and actually work with them and get them to live up to par, I think will be a great addition to the team.
Yeah, you got some nice potatoes to add into that pot roast, hopefully, at least on the edges there. So yeah, man, again, when you bring in a guy who's got a history of being at somewhere like UGA and Texas A&M, and when you're trying to get that start, I know Colorado's not that exciting and Syracuse or whatnot, but again, that's him working to get on the field. So I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table here. I saw he posted on social media about a thank you Syracuse Nation or whatnot. So it apparently is official. I have not seen Florida State announce it yet, but I think it is all but official at this time. And so the last thing I want to say on the coaching changes are really two things, Michael. And first off, it was kind of what we talked about before when we saw the Patrick Surtain firing. It's like, okay, we're moving some people or we're moving some pieces. Let's go. And then it was like, okay, I'm waiting. Who's next?
Right.
Okay. And then David Johnson leaves, who we assume pretty much was he's moving on. He's not being fired.
Right.
And you're like, okay, all right. Any time now, the news of Tony Tokar's, JP, and Derek Ray is going to drop, right? And it continues to not. And I think that is the part that's the most frustrating, right? Is if you want to roll it back, run it back with those coordinators because they're just expensive to buy out and you think they can do better, that's fine. I'm okay with
Mhm.
that. If you want to run Mike back because you can't afford to fire him, it is what it is. Let's do it, man. The least you could do is change underperforming position coaches.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of coaches on the staff that are doing a lot less than Patrick Surtain. And so to me, I think you need to see more changes. Now, I have heard people mentioning that maybe some of these changes are still yet to come because of when their coach or their contracts expire, like the end of January into February. So they may look at, firing them later down the line. But for me, I like to see some changes, but I need to see more,
Yeah.
to really get me excited for next year. I'm okay with the changes that you're making, bringing in some fresh blood, but I think you got at those three particular positions that we talked about: linebacker, special teams, quarterback, and GM. Obviously, they're going to bring in a new GM, and they have announced that there is a search firm that has been appointed to help them find this. I just think, man, the three most like boat anchor positions on the staff have not been changed. And that is what rubs me the wrong way about the changes. And maybe it's coming. Maybe it is. But those are Norvell guys that it seems like he just does not want to move on from. And
Yeah.
I don't understand it. And so to me, I need to still see more changes coming.
Yeah, it's super frustrating that we are what, say, a few weeks after the Florida game and these changes haven't happened yet. And I know they want to get it right. I know they want to do all that. I don't know how much the GM is speaking into these coaching changes, but like for sure that these guys, JP and Tony and them, they won't be back. If you know for sure, go ahead and make the call now. Like, let's get it done. Show
Yeah.
the fans that while we're going to have to endure this miserable season next year with you at the helm, at least you understand and you're trying to make it right. You're actually trying to work. And so allowing these coaches to continue, and I get it. You needed them to stay a part of signing day. Signing day's over.
Yeah. It's been over for a
It's
few
been
days.
over, and we've heard nothing. Zilch,
Mm-mm.
zippa. And when you were asked at your press conference about it, you gave nonchalant, there will be no comments. We're still working through it. It's a whole comprehension, all this stuff. BS. I'm calling BS. Okay. Show us something. Show us that you actually are going to take this stay of execution and do something with it.
Yeah. What's Mike Norvell always say? Don't talk about it, be about it. Well,
That's
hey,
right.
man, I mean, it's clear you haven't developed a quarterback since he's been here out of the high school ranks. It's clear your last two quarterbacks have not been good.
Right.
It's clear your linebackers were the glaring weakness of the defense last year, and the special teams was a unmitigated disaster. What are we doing?
Right.
And they're not, they don't even really recruit well. And so
Mm.
that's the other thing too, man. So I guess we'll see if anything comes out down the pipe later on, man. We'll see. But right now, I think it's just a lot of us are waiting to be like, man, the three weakest links on your staff, you're going to choose to retain? Are you
Mm.
serious? And so that's kind of where I'm at with the coaching changes. So hopefully those are there are more to come, but we'll
Mm-hmm.
see in the coming days. So Michael, let's talk about the class that Florida State signed, because we did not record right after early signing day. It's been a few days now. I'm sure you guys have already analyzed most of the class yourself. So we're just going to speak kind of in general terms when we talk about Florida State's early signing day class. Obviously, there is still the other signing day that we don't really count as signing day anymore. This is pretty much signing day. So there could be some more added, but I think they're pretty much done for now. What you're looking at, class, they did sign 32 high school prospects, which was actually nice to see for once. Like, they're
Yeah.
finally getting back to loading up on high school recruits. Man, the hardest part for me about seeing them sign 32 guys, I know you have some holdover pieces from last year's class that were not only good this year that hopefully you can hang on to, but you have some kind of baking in the oven that you hope turn out to be good, that you also signed that we didn't see a lot of, going into next year. Like a Chase Lofton is a guy that you feel like is going to be pretty good, but he was banged up this year. You hope that would be pretty good. But when you sign 32 high school freshmen, it kind of seems like you're planning on being around for a little bit to develop those guys. And I understand that the coaches have to operate like that. I just think, man, this is something I talked about this last show. I think you should have done stuff like this last year, where 24 or 25 after 2 and 10, 25 should have been your developmental year, where you were starting all those young guys and you were trying to just say, hey, we're building for the future. You know what I'm saying? So you bring in 32 high school prospects, 14th ranked class in the country, second in the ACC. You averaged a player rating of 89.04, which was 21st according to 247. That's by the way, that's the rankings I'm using, the 247 composite. And you had a blue chip ratio of 37.5%. So what that tells me about this class is you signed. So when we look at, you signed for Mike Norvell, this is the story, right? Another top 20 class, but another not top 10 class. And so when I look at the numbers, the breakdown of this class, if we were going to call them out for it when they did it, it was kind of like a Miami early on where you stuffed a bunch of 3-stars and it boosted your rank up. So you signed the third most recruits out of the top 20, but you ranked 21st in average rating. So it does tell you they did stuff a little bit with 23-star prospects signed. There was only one other class in the top 20 that had 20 or more 3-star prospects, and that was UNC, who is a dumpster fire as well. And only 9 of the 20 signed more than 10 3-stars. So barely about half of the top 20 signed more than 10 3-stars. 14 signed at least one 5-star. You did not sign a 5-star and you signed 23 stars. So I want to at least get that out of the way by saying you did stuff this class a little bit to make it look a little bit better than it is. But you were tied for 12th in 4 stars. So at least there's that. I think you had told me this was the lowest blue chip ratio that Mike Norvell has signed from a high school perspective, but it's also the largest class that he signed. And so you signed 0 5-stars, you signed 12 4-stars. So you got 12 blue chip recruits. You got 23 stars out of here. Now, I don't know if you believe in recruiting conspiracies or not, but Chauncey Keenan was a 5-star. And, once I think he was really actually going to sign with Florida State, they bumped him down to a 4. There's a lot of conspiracies, how people believe, depending on who you commit to, how that influences your rankings and stuff like that. But, we'll talk about some generalities in the class overall, man. But, I think when you talk about this class, look, they're the first thing that you got to say when you talk about any recruiting class. And we don't cover recruiting super in depth here because I don't trust it until I see him on campus in a uniform, right? But star ratings, because this is what's going to come out in the comment section in people's mind, right? Stars. That is a two-sided conversation, right? Star rankings do matter. They do, point blank, period. If stars meant nothing, then we would see very little relationship between the star ratings and real life performance. And that's just not the case, because you look at the blue chip standard. It's been in place since 2011. No team with under a blue chip ratio. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, blue chips are 4 and 5-star recruits. Non-blue chips are 3 stars and below. So since 2011, no team has won a national championship without having at least 50% blue chip recruits or higher on their roster. That's called the blue chip ratio. Also, look at the NFL draft pick dispersion by star ratings. And so when you look at that, and I went back and I found some of the ones from what Google search I could find. According to NFL draft picks by star rating, 62.3% of 5-stars end up as NFL draft picks. 34.3 are first-round draft picks. Now, keep in mind there are only 32 5-stars total. 32 teams, 32 5-stars. 4 stars, you get a little bit bigger pool, but not as much as 3 stars, but bigger than 5. 23.5% of those go on to be NFL draft picks. 3.8% in the first round. 3 stars get drafted about 6% of the time, and less than 1% they become first-round draft picks. Now, obviously, you have anomalies. Jared Verse is a great one to look at. 0-star coming out of high school, went on to go to Florida State after the FCS route, become a first-round draft pick, and the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. So they do matter. They just aren't perfect, and they aren't all encompassing. There are a lot of factors that can lead to lower star-rated players or less talented teams to overachieve those rankings, right? But it does matter because the blue chip ratio says it does, the standard. The NFL and NFL doesn't always mean you were great in college, but typically it does if you were drafted. And so they do matter, right? Because if the ratings were perfect, then the team with the high, we could basically rank teams based on power rankings and end the season right there. The team with the most talent always wins. It doesn't do that, right? And so I say all of that, right, to go on and say, there are going to be people who are upset we're not signing enough blue chip players. And I'm with you, right? It needs to get better, at least at certain positions, which I'll talk about in a minute. But to those who say this class sucks simply because you signed a lot of 3-stars, I caution you to just be patient and let's see what this class can turn out to be, right? Again, you look at 0-star Jared Verse compared to 4-star Pat Payton and 5-star MJJ. Who would you rather have?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the Desir twins. They turned out to be stars and they were 3-star recruits. So the end all be all of what I'm trying to say here is this is a pretty good class, but it's not good enough to be a national championship foundation building class at a place like Florida State, right? There's some nice pieces that we'll talk about in a minute, but it still has to get better. But let the results judge themselves, right? Don't just on the surface say they can't be good because they're 3-stars. Let them see how they develop in their college career, because everyone would have wrote off the Desir twins and they were your best players as freshmen, 3-stars. So let's see how that is. But no, at the end of the day, it's not good enough. It has to get better, especially in the trenches, which is the one place I want to talk about in a minute that I have the most beef with in this class. So Michael, I'll throw it back to you for some general thoughts on the class, and then we'll kind of go down through a few position groups.
Yeah. What's the thing I say all the time, Jesse, about two things?
They can be true at once.
Two things can be true at the same time. And so, and these two things is we have complained for Mike's entire 6 years that he has not been throwing enough numbers at the problem. So what they do, they went out and they threw numbers at the problem. What also is true is that the numbers that they're throwing at the problems aren't the greatest of recruits, according to the blue chip ratio, according to the stars, all of that stuff. And I feel like the stars conversation is both twofold, that yes, it matters, and no, it really doesn't matter. It's the same thing. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at the evidence of 5-stars going on, or I'm sorry, of a high-rated star players going on the NFL, a high majority of them are these 5-star players that you're seeing. So yes, that matters, absolutely. But at the end of the day, on the other side of it, sometimes you can rate a kid 5-star and they be an absolute bust for a lot of reasons. I mean, I hate to bring the kid and throw shade at him, but you look at a high King Williams, right? The dude's a bust. Now, you could say, well, that's development here, but then he went to Colorado supposedly to get better development, and he still has done absolutely nothing with himself. He was a 5-star bust because when you're playing, when you look at his playing career, just to use him as an example, you look at his high school career, he played against a bunch of nobodies and he dominated them. And so, of course, he's going to look like a 5-star kid against them. But when you put him up against actual competition, it turns out he wasn't really a 5-star kid. So that's where the stars get kind of wonky. Yes, more often than not, those players turn out to be really high draft picks. But there are times where sometimes they're just misrated, and so they're not good enough. And so the stars, in some ways, don't matter. What I will tell you is all the stats that you just said about the blue chip ratio. This is the first class since 2002 where you have 20 non-blue chip players. The highest before that was 2020. Mike Norvell with 16. The highest before that, you have to go all the way back to Jimbo's first year in 2010 with 14. This is the first year since 2002 that we've had more than we've had blue chip ratio, right? Let me give you one more just stat for this, and I'll throw it back to you on this. Is that when you look at the average OL, the offensive line commit, I know we're going to talk about that in a second, but when you look at that, this class is the lowest rated offensive line class in 13 years.
I believe it.
13 years. Lowest rated offensive line class in 13 years. So yes, they're throwing numbers at the problem. The question is, one, are they even going to be here to see these kids developed that time period? And second, are these actual kids that can play at this level? Now, granted, you are in the transfer portal going after these players who've had 4 years of starting, who were probably former 3-stars in the world, but they have experience. Are you going to be able to develop these kids to get the kind of experience to do that as well? And so when I look at this recruiting class, I think, you threw numbers at the problem, but really this class is in essence it's like a lifeline class. Whoever took your scholarship and said yes to, that's who you got. That's basically it.
Yeah, and a couple things to backtrack on what you said and then move forward. I would say definitely the Hakeem example is great, right? I mean, he spent years here, went to Colorado, had a year out there, didn't really do anything. Well, look at Jeremiah Smith, a 5-star as a freshman last year, was a phenom. Now, how much are you
Mhm.
developing that guy in what, 4 months of being on
Right.
campus before he goes to play? So, yeah, I think
That's
there
why
is
both arguments, yeah,
right. There are some that have it and there are some that don't, right? And so it's just the bust rate is typically a lot lower the higher you get in a star rating. Like
yeah,
a 3-star could be a Jared Verse. He could also be a bust, but a 5-star typically is not a bust. It doesn't mean they can't be though. But I also think you make a great point when you talk about uh this was kind of a lifeline class, right? Because for me, it's not a great class by any means, but it's a solid class for a team that has gone 7-17 in the past 2 years. It's
right,
not that bad considering the situation, right? You're lucky you got people to say yes to begin with.
right, right,
When you're in the position that you are, you don't know if your head coach is going to be around for a long time. You don't know where your position coaches are going to end up. It's not been a successful program. So to get these kids in to say yes, and you got some pieces I really like, and at least they are loading up from the high school ranks. It just still needs to be better. You signed a high upside quarterback that needs some development and may have somewhat of a low floor. But you signed one, man. You signed, he's a blue chip in some rankings, wherever you look at. You
right.
landed a few nice players at the skill positions. You got one of the best linebacker commits you've gotten in a really long time. And it was really hard to get that kid because he committed
Yes, it
like 6
was.
different times. That's another one I won't believe until I see him actually in a uniform.
I mean, he also has
S-
that ACL tear too, so
right. And so, you did do some things. You did load up in the trenches by throwing numbers at it. It's just for me, the quality in the trenches was not great. And when you talk about this class in a whole, when I don't want to dog any of these kids, right? Because they
right,
said yes to the university that we love. This is their moment, and I don't want to take their time, their moment in the sun away from them by trashing them, right? I just think you got some players who can help elevate the ship, and I think you got some who are just along for the ride, pretty much.
right, right,
And the problem that I have complained about with this program forever and a day, this goes back to my trouble in the trenches piece that I did 2 years ago, is that this program, Florida State, for the longer part of maybe 20 years even, has been built outside in. It's built with really elite level skill players and just kind of good enough offensive linemen. Like, when's the last time we had an offensive lineman or offensive line like a Georgia or a Bama where it's
oh,
5 stars, 4 stars across the board? You pull out a 5-star, you plug in a 4-star. It's just always been the biggest knock here is you don't build it from the inside out. So you can
right,
have a team like a Georgia who can go win 2 national championships with a former walk-on quarterback, right?
right,
You need elite skill play because you got to cover up what happened in the trenches. And so that is my biggest complaint with this class in a whole is that you did throw some numbers at it from a defensive line perspective and an offensive line perspective. It just wasn't a ton of quality in those players, especially when you look at the offensive side of things. Now, you have some defensive linemen that I like in this class. And I will say, from an offensive perspective, the one I am intrigued in is the Heppy kid who came over from the NFL Academy. Man, he's as raw as they come,
oof,
but dude is massive. I mean,
massive,
absolutely gigantic. And he has a 6'7", 370, and he has
oof,
a what is it, rugby background. So he's
yeah,
obviously a physical brand of player. And so I love that, man. I mean, look, one of the guys you got from England was Menelik Watson. And so you have good luck with some of that. But he's going to be massively developmental because he's really only played football for 1 year, I think.
right,
I don't even know if he's played football yet. So we'll see how that turns out. He's kind of the one that I looked at there from the offensive line that I think is could be a good project. He's probably your only true tackle body in the class. When you talk about from the receiver perspective, I do like some of the receivers that they signed in this class. The Jason Lopez kid, I'm excited to see him because he'll also contribute to the basketball program as well. Just be Will Shipley, right? Like or
right.
what's the guy, Hunter Renfro? That's the one
For
I'm thinking of.
Renfro, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Just be that one little white dude that Clemson always has, man, that just like always kills us. So get him. He's good. He's going to be good for the basketball too. Devin Carter's a guy I like. Ephraim
yep,
White.
yeah,
Maybe we need to look at making him a quarterback, right? The dude was a quarterback in high school and insanely productive. I like Amari Thomas, the running back there. Extremely productive, but kind of played in a lower level high school. So we'll see how that translates over. You signed, I like the tight ends that you signed. Xavier Tiller is more of a receiving tight end. He's the guy that's probably got to put on some weight to get down in the trenches there, put his hand in the dirt, But overall, I don't think the offensive class, I think you did get some nice pieces on here. We'll talk about the quarterback real quick, just because it's obviously the most important part of the recruiting class again. And you do sign, I'm going to say 3 and 4-star quarterback Jaden O'Neal, because according to 247, he's a 3-star. According to the composite, he is a 4-star, 6'3", 215. So he's got really good size, 344 nationally, number 24 quarterback. So he's top 25 in the class. He was previously committed to OU before they got someone they wanted a little bit more. He is a good pure passer with a big arm. Showed signs of improvement this year after he moved to Oklahoma to be close to that program before they dumped him in the class. He threw for 2,600 yards, 29 touchdowns in 10 games. He did miss 2 games with an injury. The thing when we talk about Jaden O'Neal, man, is he's not very mobile. So it's an odd scheme fit for this Gus Malzahn offense, assuming he's still going to be around by the time O'Neal even plays. So that is the weird part about this take, is that he doesn't really fit the system because he's not mobile. That doesn't mean he's a statue. He's not DJU, circa 2024 FSU. But it is a weird bit of a fit, and he does have kind of a low floor. But, man, he's got a big arm and a really high ceiling. So it was nice to see them actually get a quarterback in this class. But I'll kick it back to you for some thoughts on the offense. But let me say one quick thing about quarterback that I thought was interesting, because I was kind of looking at some of what the talking heads were saying about this class. And one of them, who does a Florida State podcast and is big in the recruiting world, that you guys can probably figure out who I'm talking about, that has recently drawn back on his effort of his podcast a little bit. I'll just leave it at that. This is not knocking him either way. He knows a heck of a lot more about recruiting than I do, right? But he said, I saw on Twitter, he said that not signing a quarterback above a 92 rating is not good, right? In their ratings. And Jaden O'Neal is a 70 or a 90 in the composite. And so I went through and I was like, well, is he onto something? Because you're probably right. Honestly, the guy knows a lot about recruiting, and the better is better, right? But so I went through and I looked at QBR rankings for this year. And QBR is not the perfect metric to measure quarterback success, but it's really good because it's kind of all encompassing. And so when I looked at the top 20, because, you get you a top 20 quarterback in QBR, those are pretty good quarterbacks, right? That's a good group to be in. And so when you look at post-signing day, where these guys are at in the top 20 quarterbacks in QBR in 2025, only 3 in the top 10 were rated a 92 or above. Only 6 in the top 20 were rated 92 above. So 70% of the top 20 quarterbacks in QBR this year were rated under a 92. This ain't a great year for quarterbacks, Michael. So what if we go back to last year? It's almost the same thing. 60% of the quarterbacks were under a 92 in the top 10, and 55 were under 92 in the top 20. Now, both years, 7 of those top 20 quarterbacks made the playoffs. So you can see how if you finish in the top 20, you're probably going to be a daggone good quarterback, right, in QBR, and you might be a playoff level quarterback. But my point of saying that is to just blindly say, because he doesn't have a 92 rating coming out of high school, means it's not good, when 70 and 55% of the quarterbacks that are top 20 in QBR the past 2 years were under a 92 rating and still killing it. Man, that's why I say I don't think you should put a kid into a box based on what a recruiting service ranking is, right?
Yeah.
Yes, 5-star quarterbacks are probably going to be better more often than 3 stars, but that doesn't mean a 3-star can't be better if he's put in the right situation to succeed. So to me, just to blindly say under 92 is not good, well, the numbers say you can still be okay.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think prime example is, I'll give you an example, non-Florida State. You look at a guy like Brock Vandergriff, who was a 5-star recruit, went to Georgia, was heralded as the heir apparent, and then he ended up transferring because he couldn't crack the field, goes to Kentucky, ends up retiring from football after one season playing for Kentucky. Then reverse that and go with a guy named Diego Pavia, who was I don't even know what star he was, unranked, right? Yep. Put him in the right system, and now he's very likely going to end up, third in the Heisman ballot, and probably get drafted in the top 5 rounds somewhere as a decent backup quarterback, potentially an opportunity if he goes somewhere that's really bad, an opportunity to have a chance to compete for a spot there. So yes, 5-star recruits will quarterbacks definitely will all have a great chance of becoming something. But there's an opportunity that they don't. Again, that's why the rankings matter, and then sometimes they don't. It just depends on the system, development, the coaching, all those factors come into play of what this guy. And so Jaden O'Neal could turn out to be absolute bust as a rivals industry 4-star 89.43 average, or he could turn out to be the next Jameis Winston. We don't know. We really don't know until he gets into the system and we see. Now, you could just say, Jesse, based on what we've seen with Mike Norvell, he's going to be a bust. And I would
Yeah.
take that because every quarterback we've had here from the high school ranks has turned out to be bad because we've not developed them. So I guess you could say that, but we don't know what he could be.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you're talking about Diego Pavia, unranked recruit. Trinidad
Mm-hmm.
Chambliss at Ole Miss right now, unranked recruit. Guess what? Cam Ward was an
Ward.
unranked recruit. So yeah, I don't you can buy into that stuff, right? But just keep in mind there's only so much you can do with it. Now, when you talk about the defensive side of the ball, man, I do think they got some nice pieces here. Chauncey Keenan did end up signing with Florida State. And like we said, man, after you lost the Timmons kid, I think you really wanted to get this one from just a perspective of not having your top recruit taken again on signing day, which that was the one thing I will say about the signing day, man. It was actually, I think it was pretty good for Florida State, right? They got him signed quick.
Yeah.
I know I was going to make graphics all day, and I woke up at like 7:30 in the morning. We already had some signs. I was like, boy, I got to get out of bed and fire the computer up. They signed everybody they intended to. They signed a few that they didn't, and they didn't have any major flips. So I think signing day as a whole went pretty good. But you get Chauncey Keenan, blue chip quarterback or cornerback, used to be a 5-star. So I like that. Isaiah Williams, again, we joke about it, but I'm glad he finally landed here. You want to see him get back healthy, man. You know, a top 10 linebacker. When's the last time Florida State signed one of those out of high school? So that's a good one there. I like the Ernest Rankins kid on the defensive line. You got some size in there, man. I will say that's the thing with the offensive line, too. I know a lot of these guys don't project well, but they're all huge, man. They're all massive bodies. And, you know, sometimes you can coach the technicals. You can't coach the size. You can't coach the motor. And so if you can get that and you can kind of polish them, then you can turn that into a good player. Franklin Whitley's another guy that I like on the defensive side of the ball. The one that they flipped from South Florida, the Jamin Pinkney, was a good pickup, blue chip pickup there from South Florida, right there at the end. You know, you had a couple others that you added. Yeah, it did have a couple of blue chip or JUCO players in there. You know, we've been kind of hit or miss with JUCO as far as that goes. I think you got some underrated players too, with the Caron, however you want to say it, Maycott kid, the linebacker. And I think he could be somebody for you. So, you know, it's not a star-studded class, but man, I think you got 6, 8, 10 pretty decent pieces in this class, man. And so I think it's pretty good. It's just like you said, man, the last thing I'll say on this is it just comes back to, well, now what? Are we going to see more of the flops of like a Hakeem Williams, the flops of you name this guy, the Patrick Paytons? Are we going to see those flops that happened under the old staff, or are we going to see where you see a 3-star Desir twin get on the field and make a huge impact early on under the new staff that we've seen? Which path are you going to travel now? So, you know, again, long story short, no, this probably isn't a class that's going to build you a national championship roster. But considering you were 7-17 in the past 2 years and you just got 32 kids to say yes, and you got a couple of blue chips and some nice pieces in there, you know what, man? I think it was a drama-free, quiet, good signing day for Florida State.
Yeah. I want to go back to the Chauncey Keenan guy. You know, he likes to go by Chuck. That's what he wants to be called, is Chuck. Now, you remember the last corner?
I'm about to say, well, you know, we had Jerry and Jeremiah, so
exactly. I was gonna say Jeremiah was an all-world cornerback. Jerry was somebody I wanted to choke out when he was, you know, dropping picks and being torched, you know. So maybe we should keep
he can start with Chuck, but if he doesn't play well, we're going back to Chauncey. It's like when your mom uses your middle name or something, you know you're in trouble.
Exactly. Yep. Well, this kid, you know, Chauncey Keenan, he was going to be a Seminole no matter what. I mean, I think there's a quote somewhere out there where he said, doesn't matter who the coach is, I'm coming to Florida State. He has a FSU tattoo on him. This kid, like me, was, you know, if he got the scholarship, it didn't matter if the janitor was coaching.
He was like a Derwin James, man.
Exactly.
He was Derwin James guy.
Yeah. And so you know, was really happy that they were able to keep him as well. He seems like he's going to be a good kid. You know, you worry, like, is he another in the fold of the of the man coverage. But no, when you go back and watch his film, he's very good from the zone eyes. He's got that kind of skill set in him. And I think overall, this defensive class is good. There's obviously areas that need to improve, obviously along the defensive line. I really want to see what they develop there. Again, they need better help, not more help. They need better help. So better players. But right. Is this team going to get developed? Is this going to be the coaching staff to develop these players? And so we'll see what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, again, you got to at least throw numbers at the problem and hope at least a few of these guys work out. Maybe you hit on a couple more, Desir twins or something like that. We'll see. So the last thing that I want to end on here, Michael, is the college football playoff and everything that goes into that picture. Obviously, we're not in that picture, but we're going to talk about it real quick anyway and have some fun with it. But before we do that, guys, if you're enjoying this show, like and subscribe on YouTube. Rate and review on the podcast helps us reach other Noel fans. We would greatly appreciate you guys joining the PTS family here. We are trying to push for that 3,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. It would be really, really awesome if you guys could help us out with that. Again, just make sure that you are subscribed. Check that button. You might think you are and you're not. But man, we'd greatly appreciate that. Also, if you would like to consider joining the PTS tribe, it is only $5 a month. Everything that we get goes back into the show to help it make it better for you guys. So we just ask, it's not required. We just ask that you consider that option. And it's also not required to subscribe, but why wouldn't you? Because it's going to keep you loaded up with the FSU content that you love. Again, like I said, man, I had someone ask me, if we're going to go away during the off season, and no, Plant the Spear is a year-round podcast. We are not going to give up. Tough times or not, we're going to be here either way. We might just do our usual where we drop back to about one episode per week. And then when there's news to talk about, we'll jump on and do that, which is why, programming note, some of the shows that we're going to do during the off season may cover 6 to 8 topics at one time because we don't do this full time. We just have to work things in as we have time to record. So, just wanted to put that out there as well. So appreciate you guys jumping on the subscriber train with us. So Michael, let's talk about the CFP just a little bit here. We don't have to go super in depth with it, but as football fans, we're all going to be watching these, right? At least some people say they won't. I know they will. But I think we'll start with non-CFP related is that Florida State did decline a bowl. That has come out.
We did.
Yeah, they were one of the 5 and 7 teams that when you had some opt-outs, they had the opportunity to go play in a bowl because of their APR, which again, kudos to Mike Norvell. He's done everything right off the field, man. That's a good thing to be in that position to do, but they did decline the bowl. I don't think it was a bad move given the timing, right? We talked about this before the show. I think if you offer that bowl right after the Florida game, like maybe the Monday after the Florida game, I think they probably take it, right? I think they want those 15 extra practices for the young guys. But all the reports were that they were not operating under the assumption they were going to go to a bowl. So now you're 2 weeks removed. Guys have probably went home. You got guys that probably aren't working out right now. Guys getting ready for the, maybe a couple of them getting ready for the draft. You've had some coaching changes and things like that. So it wouldn't have been in Doak, so it probably would have been lost. So I guess maybe, I hate to say it, but it's probably the truth. So I don't hate them declining the bowl. I would have liked to you have just earned one outright. But given that it had been 2 weeks, man, I don't think it hurts anything because you were going to get the Birmingham Bowl against kind of a G5 opponent anyway. So, it would have been fun to have, but given the timeline, I don't blame Florida State for opting out.
Yeah, I don't blame Florida State for
opting. Let me not say opting out, declining.
Yeah, listen, for me, it's like you should earn the right to go to a bowl. Florida State did not earn the right to go to the bowl. They would have backed into that bowl game had they been able to accept it. Also, we're well aware that Mike Norvell and staff, they actually were hoping for it. They really wanted to get into a bowl game so that they could see some of these younger players. So they would have hoped for it. But the problem was because they took so long to get through the bowl selection process that by the time they got to Florida State and were offered the bowl, most of those players, they already conducted their exit interviews. They'd already done all that stuff. So those players were gone. They were already away. And so I'm actually glad because for me, it would just been embarrassing. Let's say you win that bowl game. Now you're 6 and 7. You still have a losing season. Like it did.
You'd be 5 and 8.
You'd be 5 and 8 if you lost the game. So it was a no-win situation for Florida State.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't hate them opting out, just declining. It's not opting out because they were never in to get out. They just declined an opportunity that they weren't expecting. But when you talk about the field, man, let's talk about those that did make it in. All right. And we'll talk about the games as they go. And then we'll talk about the situations that led to these teams getting in and maybe the loves and gripes that we have with that. So you have Alabama with a rematch against Oklahoma. Of course, Alabama got in. They're an SEC
Of
team.
course.
Surprise, surprise. We'll talk
Of
about that in a
course.
minute. So Bama goes on the road to play Oklahoma, a team they already lost to once this season. And the winner of that game will then face Indiana, which, by the way, that Big Ten championship was something to watch, man. Kurt Signetti is just unbelievable. Like to basically take over historically the most losing team in college football history and to turn them into a two-time playoff team, Big Ten champion within 2 years, the first 2 years.
You basically have the Heisman winner at quarterback right now.
Unbelievable job by that guy, man. And that's why we say sometimes star ratings don't matter, because actually I hope Indiana wins because they can finally break the blue chip method, blue chip standard. They can be the one to do it. And so then you have JMU at Oregon. That should be one to watch.
Blowout Central.
We'll see. And the winner of that game will go on to play Texas Tech. Miami they snuck in there, daggone it, like a old dirty dog at midnight sneaking in the back door, man. They made it in. We'll talk about that situation in a second. They do go out to Texas A&M to go play against the Aggies there, and the winner of that game will get to play Ohio State. And, I will say this. We're going to talk about Miami in a second. I really wanted them to get left out, but I also was like, you know what, man? What if they get in and they get smoked? That's equally as funny that you cried to get in for the last month and then you just got smoked when you got in anyway. But unfortunately, the team that they're playing is not unranked, so they'll probably win because, that's usually what they do is lose to unranked teams. Tulane at Ole Miss. That is another game that I don't understand why it's happening, only because of the rules. And the winner of that game is going to go on to play Georgia. So, yeah, man, a lot of thoughts on this playoff here, right? Obviously, the thing that takes the cake is the three teams that were battling to get in: Alabama, Miami, and Notre Dame. And so, of course, Alabama, the only thing you got to say against them is, they got in because they play in the SEC, and that's where they play, and that's who they play against, and that's what got them the bid, right? It's tough because when you go and you play like they did against, technically – they set the precedence that you're not supposed to punish the teams that play in the conference championship game. They set that precedence with SMU last year by them losing to Clemson and then still getting into the playoffs. And so you were kind of like, well, now we can't do that this year. We got to follow that same standard, right? And so Bama goes and gets dominated by Georgia, essentially, -3 yards rushing. And then they still get in. But then you also turn around and you punish BYU, who lost to Texas Tech in a blowout fashion. So it's like you followed the standard for one team, but you didn't follow the standard for the other team. Now, of course, that one team is ESPN-owned SEC team, and the other is a Fox/ESPN-owned Big 12 team. And so you went against your own standard in this too. So it was ridiculous, first off, that Alabama got in. But that brings you to the bigger conversation of, I think it's time to do away with conference championship games because it is, I understand that you should not get punished for this. I wholeheartedly agree with that because how do you know that Miami doesn't get into the ACC championship game and get blown out and then they lose the opportunity and they look bad? It's not fair for these teams to have to play in a game they'll be judged on when teams who aren't as good or as highly rated or seeded or whatever the case may be, they're not being judged because they're sitting on the sidelines. And so that is the hard conversation to have about conference championship games. But when you lose like you did as Alabama and BYU, how does that not matter? Because guess what? The team you probably just lost to is going to be a playoff team.
Yeah.
So why should you get the right to lose by 3 scores and then go back into the playoffs and get to play that team again? So that is the thing that I think we have to figure something out as far as this goes. But, Miami sneaks in. And we were joking about it before the show. Like, I hate it, but they kind of deserve to get in the situation, given that they did beat Notre Dame head to head, and you have to honor that. But the one thing I will say about Miami getting in is just this, and this is mostly for the Miami fans that I know are going to be in here in the comments trying to make a joke. Look, Florida State got screwed out of a 4-team playoff, but we would have for certain gotten into a 12-team playoff. Miami skated into a 12-team playoff and for sure would not have even been in the conversation of a 4-team playoff.
Correct.
So miss me with the you got snubbed and we didn't mess. It's an entirely different conversation. Yeah, man. So, but I think they did deserve to get in over Notre Dame because the results on the field have to matter, and they won the head-to-head.
Yeah, the whole thing with the Miami thing is the conversation should have never came down between Miami and Notre Dame. The problem that the committee did is they put Notre Dame way too high in their initial rankings. They put Notre Dame way too high. Notre Dame had lost to both Miami and Texas A&M. They were 0-2. And then they had a run of a couple games against Purdue, Stanford, blah, 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 blah.
Bunch of
And
bad
when
teams.
a bunch of bad teams. And so when the rankings came out, because of the way they had won those games against a bunch of bad teams, they got overranked, right? They got overranked. They were ranked way too high. And then the committee, because they're a bunch of just not intelligent individuals, then spent the rest of the season trying to explain away their mistake of overranking Notre Dame when they should have ranked Miami higher than Notre Dame to begin with. But when the rankings came out in week 8, Notre Dame was ranked above Miami. And so Hunter Yurchek, the AD at Arkansas, who was the chairperson of the committee, kept saying, well, we're not even considering the head-to-head because they're not in the same tier of teams. Well, that was the most asinine thing you could have said, and logic, because they should have been. Miami had better wins than Notre Dame did. Miami had fewer losses at the time. Also, Notre Dame hadn't played anybody. Okay.
Yes, and Miami beat them head to head.
And Miami beat them head to head. So then when it came down to it, the real conversation should have been Notre Dame versus Alabama. Okay. That's where the real conversation should have been. And this is my gripe with Alabama. Yes, Alabama beat Georgia in the regular season and then got shellacked by them in the conference championship game. And you don't want to punish a team for playing in the conference championship game. I get that, because then, you know what? No one will want to play in a conference championship game. But that was Alabama's third loss. They also had, and I hate to say this because it's my beloved school, the worst loss of the playoff teams in the field against Florida State, a 5-7 Florida State, where they got shellacked on the road against Florida State.
Yeah.
And then you had the galls to then punish a BYU team that had one less loss than Alabama, who, yes, got blown out twice by Texas Tech. You said to them, actually, we're going to punish you for losing to Texas Tech again, but we're not going to punish Alabama. And so really the conversation should have came down to Notre Dame versus Alabama. Now, if you had told me that we're going to put Alabama in over Notre Dame because the Alabama has better wins, blah, 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 I could get around that. But like you said, Jesse, I love this, is that whenever you're about to get screwed from a playoff, if you're a team and you're somewhere in that 9, 10, 11, 12 mark, and you see Alabama near, you might as well just go ahead and just understand you ain't making the playoffs because Alabama's getting in.
Yeah, that Crimson A is the Grim Reaper of playoff appearances. Like, as soon as it shows up on screen, your playoff hopes are dead. Right. And, and it's just funny because, like, when you talk about Alabama, their best win was beating Georgia in Athens. Well, they just got demolished by that team in a neutral site. So now you're kind of like, I also look at it with Notre Dame. Like, Notre Dame has the right to be upset. I get that, but you look at, okay, that team was maybe a little bit of a different team at the end of the season than they were at the beginning. Alabama gets that same grace about maybe they were the different team at the end than they were when they lost against Florida State. When you talk about a freshman quarterback making his first start versus having 12 games of experience. So I understand why they're mad. But at the same time, Notre Dame, you don't like it? Join a conference, man. It's time. Stop. Like, they're upset because they didn't get rewarded for playing in a conference championship game, but they won't join a conference. So guess what, man? You weren't complaining last year whenever you didn't have to play a conference championship game, but now you are. So make up what you want to do and then figure that out. But then not only that, they go and they start crying and shake their fists and stomp their feet and opt out of a bowl, which I don't love it. Right. And fair warning, I'm about to talk out of both sides of my mouth. So on the one hand, I wish Florida State had done this in 2023, right? You actually got royally screwed. You were an undefeated Power 4 champion. They just got their feelings hurt and told that, which, by the way, hey, hats off to the committee. And I don't say that often. I'm surprised they did it. Yeah, I thought for sure they would have given Notre Dame the Notre Dame bump and screwed the ACC. I wish they would have, because I don't want Miami in, but at the same time, I wish Florida State had done that in 2023 in that Orange Bowl with all the opt-outs that you had. I wish you had not played that game, but you manned up and you played it. The problem for me, again, with this Notre Dame thing is like, so basically anytime you don't make the playoffs, we're just saying that bowls don't matter. And this is a whole nother show that we could have during the offseason when there's nothing else to do. But I just want to touch on it for a second, man, is we have to figure out what we're doing in the postseason with stuff like this. Now, I understand that they were not the only team to opt out. And when I say Florida State declined a bowl, that's a different conversation than we earned a bowl, we're not going to play in it. You had some other teams, I think Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State had some coaching changes. They decided not to do it. But Notre Dame was going to be in the best bowl that was not the playoffs. And so does that not matter anymore to us? And I know that's a product of money and what we've done with the game, with everything now. Because if you think about it, the bowls only exist so teams can play and they can get that money. And then players don't want to play in the bowl because they don't want to take a chance on getting hurt and missing out on money. So all of this comes back to the almighty dollar, which is the problem, right? When I look at this, man, what happened to the love of the game, right? What happened to that? And I get it. When Georgia and Florida State played in 23, everyone's like, well, go play in the Orange Bowl and go beat them and show them you get to be in the playoffs. So I was like, man, screw that. You're not going to prove anything. They're not going to let you in the playoffs. But what happened to just playing a game because you love playing football, man? What happened to having those? Like, Michael, do you remember, and I know you know this as well as I do, and this is the thing I said I didn't want to tell you before the show because I wanted that raw reaction, man. It's like you remember, and I'm sure every guy, every even female athlete who was an athlete playing this game, especially football, you remember the last time you took them pads off.
Oh, yeah.
And like, other than the 37 and up league, which I'm below a hammy out, so I can't be up in that. I gotta have a job. Football is a unique sport where you don't get an opportunity. I can go be part of a slow pitch softball.
Yep.
I can play pickup basketball.
Yep.
Once you take them pads off, man, that's it.
Yeah.
That's done. And I know they said they took a team vote, but how many of those seniors who thought they had another game coming one way or the other, whether it be bowl or playoff or whatnot, their season is now over. And how many of those guys aren't going to go to the NFL? They'll never get that opportunity again. How many of the fans who are like, man, I'm pissed off we didn't get in the playoffs either. But I love that bowl game trip at the end of the year. I give a lot of money to this program. I can't wait to see them play. Or I live in, wherever, and Notre Dame's coming over here for a bowl. I can't wait to see them play. You're just like, well, screw y'all too. I don't care what you want either. We're just mad because we didn't make the playoffs. So, man, I don't love this look. And so I think what it says is we got to figure out something with the bowls.
Yeah.
I think there's too many when you're trying to hand them out to the 5 and 7 teams. I think we need to draw some of these back. But I also think you just need to figure something out with these bowls, man, because I love them. It's free football. But I think maybe you even look at, I've heard the concept before where you move them to the beginning of the year, where it's almost like you have that as kind of an exhibition match at the beginning of the year. I think that would be kind of fun too. The last thing I'll say on the Notre Dame situation, though, man, is like, I'm also wondering, because the ACC put a lot of their chips into this, leveraging this relationship with Notre Dame. I wonder how this is going to sever that relationship, because they've already come out and I think said something about maybe ending the relationship with the ACC because they're mad about it. And it's like, man, that's not going to be good for the conference if Notre Dame pulls out of the scheduling alliance. But they're also tied to the ACC in every sport that's not named football. So that's going to be really hard. I think those are just emotional decisions or whatnot. But the last thing I got to say, man, I'll throw it back to you some final thoughts on the CFP is not only do we got to figure out the bowl situation, we got to figure out this automatic qualifier type of stuff, right? You're going to leave out a 10-2 Vanderbilt that has good wins. You're going to leave out a team like BYU that has a lot of good wins to put in a Tulane who gets to play Ole Miss, who already lost by 5 touchdowns this year to Ole Miss. You're going to put in JMU over these teams. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, man. You should have to earn your way in, not get handed a playoff bid when you play 2 Power 4 teams a year. Because we were talking about this before the show. Let's say this thing runs out 3 or 4 more years and the G5 teams, everyone wants you to get in there and pull an upset because it's fun. Everyone loves the underdog. But what if you go in there and 5 years straight, you've been smashed as a G5 team? Then what are we doing, right? That could have went to someone. Is anyone going to pick Tulane? Is anyone going to pick JMU? Like, I remember when you saw the game spreads, it was like 1.5, 3.5, 21.5. And it's like, man, that tells you right there, you should not be in. And I'm all for them getting a chance, but I don't think it should come at the expense of a 10-2 SEC team. What is a 10-2 BYU or 10-3 BYU or a Notre Dame team or something like that. It's just crazy, man. So there's a lot they need to do to fix the postseason of college football. We got a lot of stuff to fix in college football, period. The postseason, the bowls, the playoffs, to see all this stuff, man, we need to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah. Well, what I'll say to that is, because it's the rule right now, I'm fine with it. That's the rule. That's what it is. If they ever change the rule, I wouldn't be against a rule change where the group of 5 just has their own set of playoff, because you're just not playing the same set of players all the time. You don't have the same thing. I mean, tell me the last time. This isn't your granddaddy's college football, as I like to say, where you have a Boise State, where you have a Utah, before they were a Power 4 school, whatever, that could come up and they had semblance of they could be able to grow their players' experience and talent and all like that stuff over years, and now they can compete with a Power 4 program. This is not that anymore. Power 4 programs are taking G5 players and putting them, on their team when they fully develop, when they've had 4 years. So you're always constantly playing behind. So yeah, I think at some point you have to look at that and just say, you know what? The Power 4 just has to be a separate level of championship versus the G5, just like they've done with the FCS, right? You would never put an FCS, you wouldn't take North Dakota State. I think that's the school that always wins the national title, or Montana State. You wouldn't put them in a Power 4 playoff. They'd get destroyed. So why are we doing that with the G5 level as well, too? What I'll say about...
I was going to say, and if you think star ratings don't matter in recruiting,
they do there.
They do there.
They do there. What I'll say about the bowl season and what we do with the bowl is I'll take a line from Coach O, go tag us. He came out recently. It was recently posted that he was asked about NIL era, and he said, the difference between now NIL versus not NIL was that the bag man used to come in from the back door. Now the bag man comes in through the front door. Okay. And with the bowl season, because the bag man comes in through the front door, these bowls don't have the same meaning like they used to, right? But something that you brought up that I thought was so key is that what we're not thinking about is from the fan experience. You and I, Jesse, we are stakeholders in Florida State's football program. We give money to this program. We buy gear. We have season tickets. We're boosters. We are stakeholders. And at the end of the day, these programs owe their stakeholders. I get that these teams don't want to play anymore when you're not playing for the playoff. They're, risk injury and all that stuff. And if you had said this back when there were no NIL and these players were only getting scholarships, okay, fine. You know what? You're right. We don't play them. We don't pay them anything. They are paid now. And if we're being honest, the game of football is an entertainment. It's for the entertainment of fans like you and me. You work at the behest of us. I know that sounds harsh and crazy, but it's true. It's true. We pay. The reason why you have NIL is because of fans. And if fans want to see your team in a bowl game, your institution owes that school. Yes, I would have preferred Florida State not play in that Orange Bowl and walk away 63-3. That was embarrassing. I was there. I watched the entire, I missed the first quarter, but I watched the entire 3 quarters of that game in the stands. That was
You
terrible.
should have missed the last 3 quarters.
Should have missed the last 3 quarters. Exactly. That was terrible. Absolutely ridiculous. But you know what? Florida State owed it to the fans to be there and to play in that game. Notre Dame owed it to their fans to show up to the bowl game and play because of all the money that's been given to get those players, to pay those coaches, to pay all those people. Football, college football is an entertainment sport. You're there to entertain. If the fans stopped coming, there wouldn't be any more college football. That's my whole point to all of that.
Yeah, which has always killed me. Like when I see that we're all we got, we all we need, or whatever, and don't be a fan later. It's like, you're not all you need, because without the fans' money, none of this would. You think the school is just going to build a $150 million football only facility for a team that doesn't make any money? No, they're not going to do that. So yeah, and a lot of times with these bowls, like, I get it. Not a lot of people are signing up to go to Shreveport or Birmingham. But, like, if you're Notre Dame and you're going to make a good bowl, one of the better bowls that are a non-playoff, people might look forward to that every year. Like, man, this bowl game is going to be my vacation or whatever for the winter or something like that. People who follow these games religiously. So, yeah, I don't love that. that we've started this process now. It went from players opting out to now teams opting out. And so you got to figure something out. Maybe you boil it down to there's only a few bowls. Maybe we have an NIT tournament or something like that. Who knows? I'm not in charge of fixing it. I just know I don't like the way it's going. That we're kind of saying these, and they don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But it's like you said, it's almost more for the fans than anything, and development of the young players, right? Which is why I think Florida State could have used a bowl to get those. I would have loved Kevin Sperry to have all 15 practices and the game to let's see what he can do for next year. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox, Michael. That's gonna be it for that. Now, real quick, we'll do a rapid fire. We will probably be recording before these games get played, but just in the off chance that we don't or we forget, let's do a rapid fire, Michael. I can go ahead and tell you right now, I'm going home teams down the slot. I'm going Oklahoma over bottom. I don't know that I want to pick Oklahoma over Bama. It is in Norman, which I think I give the edge there. Alabama is, I don't know, man. Oklahoma doesn't have much of an offense, but Oklahoma did beat them once already. And Bama's not been playing great towards the end of the season. So I don't know, man. It's kind of hard. Can they beat them twice in the season? You know, Georgia just beat them when they didn't. And so it's tough. So I don't know, dude. That defense is pretty good, and Alabama's offense has been struggling. So I know Bama's was really. I will at least give this to Bama. They've been really banged up, and so they should get some guys back. So you know what? I'll flip it. I'll go Bama over OU. I think Oregon's going to obviously blow out JMU. I think Texas A&M is going to beat Miami, and I think Ole Miss is going to blow out Tulane.
Yeah, I got obviously Oregon blowing out JMU. Oklahoma's a 1.5 point favorite right now. That's where the spread is right now. And yes, Oklahoma has owned Bama the last 2 times they've played, especially last year when they went there and lost 27-7, I believe it was the score. But man, I don't know, man. I don't know.
That's a tough one to pick.
It's a tough one to pick. I'm gonna take Oklahoma, but the margin is like that. Obviously, I got Ole Miss over Tulane. I think that'd be a blowout. I'm going to take Texas A&M. I'm going to take Texas A&M.
I will mute you right now.
I know, but I would not be shocked. Just because they
got a chip on their shoulder. They got something to prove.
Exactly. And Texas A&M historically has not been good in big games, no matter who the coach is. So I'm just saying. That's all.
We just need them to be good for one game.
That's it.
That's it. And I know they played, a couple years ago. What is it? I think they lost out there, but won here. So we'll see, man. Yeah, I was about to say, don't make me beat you and pick Miami. We're not doing that. We just need one good game from you, Texas A&M. Come on, the ghost of Jimbo Fisher, please, just one time. So we'll see. Mario's still their coach, so they got a really good chance of losing that game. So anyway, with that being said, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Like I said, we had a lot to get to today, so I know we ran a little bit long. We just wanted to try and catch up on everything at one time that we needed to. And, again, we'll be back as news breaks or we have other things to talk about or the other sports get rolling and stuff like that. So don't worry. We're not going anywhere. We're just going to, kind of take it as in stride as the news happens. So we appreciate you guys rocking with us for this one. Again, like and subscribe, rate and review on the podcast helps us reach other Noles fans. You can also join the tribe by hitting the join button on YouTube. If you would like to take that extra step, check out Alumni Hall FSU. Use promo code SPIRIT to save 10% on everything that you buy. We also have a website, plantthespirit.com, where you can find all of our stuff. I'm kind of slack on writing. If you want to be a college football writer and you don't mind working for a charity, you can just message me and I will probably let you write for the website because I have a hard time keeping up with it. But with that being said, guys, we appreciate you and we will catch you on the next one. As always,
go Noles.